My entire family went on an overseas trip, but somehow forgot one thing. I'm still part of this family. I only found out about the trip through their bright, smiling photos on Instagram. No invitation, not even a heads up. My mom just said coldly, "We thought you wouldn't want to come." I was used to being forgotten. It hurt, but I swallowed it. Then, out of nowhere, I won over $2 million in the lottery. And suddenly, I was family again. They demanded a share, called me selfish when I refused. But money can't buy back the years of being excluded. At that moment, I asked just one question. Is love conditional? I wasn't born into a bad family, but I never truly felt welcome in it either. There are 5 people in my family: my dad, my mom, my older brother, who's always been the pride of the family with his perfect report cards, and my younger sister, sweet, adorable, constantly pampered like a little princess. Then there's me, the middle daughter, who always seemed to be caught in the middle of everything. Between attention and neglect, between praise and silence, between pity and vague expectations. I wasn't exceptional. I was just enough. I tried hard enough not to get scolded, lived quietly enough not to be noticed, and was agreeable enough not to cause trouble. But the price I paid for being agreeable was slowly fading from the emotional map of my family. They never called me a burden, but they never made me feel like a source of pride either. When I earned a college scholarship, my dad said, "Well, that's decent, but your brother got a full ride, remember?" When I asked to take a semester off for my mental health, my mom simply shook her head and said, "Don't be so weak." I didn't resent them. I just learned. I learned to stay quiet. I learned to self-heal. But what truly revealed my place in the family was that trip, the one they had planned for months without saying a single word to me. I didn't find out through a phone call or a text. I found out through a photo my little sister posted on Instagram. The whole family smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower, arms in the air, beaming with joy. I looked at that photo 3 times. I couldn't believe my eyes. It felt like standing outside a locked door, hearing laughter from inside. The laughter of people who once shared my blood. I texted my mom, trying to keep my tone light. "I didn't know you all went to France. Why didn't anyone tell me?" She replied 3 hours later, "We thought you wouldn't be interested in going, and things were a bit tight financially, honey." I didn't reply, because I knew whatever I said would just be turned around on me. I'd be told I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too negative. So I stayed silent. But this time, the silence wasn't acceptance. It was a cut. And in that moment, sitting in my room, staring at my phone, and realizing I wasn't even considered family for a once-in-a-lifetime memory, that moment became the first crack, the first shattered piece in the picture I had tried to believe in, the illusion of unconditional family love. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, for a long time, with one question echoing in my head that I couldn't shake off. If I weren't their biological child, would they have treated me differently? Or is it exactly because I am, that they thought they could erase me without even saying sorry? And then, life went on. No one mentioned the trip when they got back. No souvenirs, no stories, no explanations. I was prepared to bury that pain the way I always had. Until fate flipped the script. Out of nowhere, luck found me. And for the first time, I had the power to redraw every single line that had ever been crossed. I never used to believe in luck. But one tired Friday afternoon, on my way home from work, I passed by a convenience store and saw a bright red sign that read, "Jackpot exceeds $2 million." I didn't have a plan. I wasn't dreaming. It was just a spur-of-the-moment decision, like I needed to prove to myself that the universe still remembered I existed. I bought a lottery ticket, just one, slipped it into my coat pocket and forgot about it. 3 days later, I was eating breakfast, scrolling through my phone and reading the news when I saw the winning numbers. Something made me pause. I reached into my coat, pulled out that crumpled ticket. I stared at it. Then I looked again. And then I screamed because I couldn't believe it. I had won over $2 million, a number I never even dared to imagine, especially for someone who'd once been left out of a family vacation because we're tight on money. It took me nearly a week to calm down. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I went to the bank, met with a lawyer, built a financial plan. I paid off the last of my student loans, invested part into a retirement fund, bought a small but cozy apartment not far from my job, and then I let myself enjoy something for once. I bought the car I had been admiring for 3 years, but never dared to dream about. There was just one thing I hadn't done. I hadn't told my family. Not because I was scared, but because I knew exactly what would happen if they found out. And I wasn't sure I was ready to deal with that. But silence never lasts. One afternoon, I was driving home, my new car sparkling under the sun, and stopped by the little cafe near my mom's place. Barely an hour later, I got a text from my sister. "Wow, new car, must be nice." I didn't respond right away, but I knew. That was just the beginning. And I was right. 3 days later, my mom called. Her voice was flat, cold, like she was holding back anger. "You won the lottery, didn't you?" I was quiet for a few seconds. Then I said, "Yeah, I was planning to keep it to myself." What followed was the exact storm I had predicted. "The family is struggling. How could you be so selfish? Your sister still has student debt. Your brother doesn't even have a stable home. We're family, and this is how you treat us?" I just listened, quietly. And for the first time in my life, I didn't apologize. I didn't yell. I didn't say anything cruel. I just spoke, calmly, but with certainty. "Mom, I've always been left out of the family's plans. My whole life, I was never anyone's priority. That overseas trip you all took without me, that was the clearest example. So now, when I finally have something of my own, I don't feel obligated to share it with people who chose to exclude me from their happiness." There was a long pause. Then she said bitterly, "Fine, go live your life alone, with your money." And she hung up. No congratulations, no concern, just disappointment, blame, and that all too familiar feeling, as if I was never really part of them. But this time, I didn't fall apart. Because now, I had a choice. I thought that phone call with my mom was the end of it, that somehow, eventually, they'd come to understand, even if it was late. But I underestimated just how much my family believed they had ownership over me, and over my money too. Less than a week later, my younger sister texted me, "Hey sis, I need a quick favor. My school's asking for tuition for next semester. Could you help cover $12,000 for now? No warm greetings, no congratulations, just a request, blunt and cold." As if there was some unspoken contract between us. I had money, and they had the right to demand it. I said no, gently, clearly, and right after that came a long message from my brother, going on about how he wanted to start his own business but was stuck trying to buy a house. He ended with, "If we were really a close family, I don't think you'd hesitate over this." I didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. That so-called close family he mentioned, the one that once left me eating dinner alone in the kitchen while they threw our sister's birthday party in the living room, the same family where I asked Dad for a little money to buy exam prep books, and he said no, only to buy my brother a brand new iPad the next day because he needs it to learn programming. I used to let all of that slide, but this time, I wasn't willing to sacrifice anymore. I replied, "This isn't about the money. It's about respect. And I've never felt respected in this family." No one responded. But that same evening, I got a call from my father. His voice was low and measured, like he was trying hard to stay calm. "I don't understand what you're thinking. This is family business, not some stranger. What you're doing is pulling away from us." I took a deep breath, paused, then said, "Dad, I'm not pulling away. I've already been pushed out a long time ago. This time, I'm just refusing to pretend like nothing ever happened." He scoffed. "That trip was a small thing, but this money, this is big. Sure, you can keep it, but don't expect us to treat you the same anymore." And in that moment, I understood. It wasn't the refusal to share money that upset them. It was the fact that I dared to say no, something they never expected from me. They had always seen me as the easiest one to overlook, the quiet, compliant shadow. But now that I had power, They couldn't stand the fact that I was no longer the good, obedient daughter. And I started to see it clearly. If family ties need money to survive, maybe they were never real to begin with. That day, I wrote a long email, not to lecture, but to close the chapter. I told them I still loved them, in my own way, but I would never accept love with conditions. I wouldn't pay for acceptance. And if their love depended on my wallet, then maybe it was time I learned to live without it. I hit send, didn't wait for a reply, and for the first time in my life, I felt light. The days after I sent the email were filled with absolute silence. No one replied, no questions, no rebuttals, and it was that silence that hurt the most. Because it confirmed something I had always suspected but never dared to believe. Their love for me wasn't deep enough to overcome their disappointment over money. I didn't break down and cry. But there were nights I lay awake until 3 a.m., phone in hand, waiting for a single message from my mother. Just one line, something like, "Are you okay?" And I would have forgiven everything. But nothing came. Just the ticking of the clock and the dim light of a night lamp that couldn't warm the emptiness inside me. Loneliness, when you live alone, is a physical sensation. But loneliness, when you have a family and still feel like an outsider, that's the ache of a soul being rejected. I started turning inward, recalling every moment I was forgotten. Every birthday where I baked my own cake. The time I had a high fever and stayed home alone while the whole family went to a relative's wedding. Because if no one watches the kid, who'll greet the guests? For the first time, I didn't suppress those memories. I let myself face them, sit with them, and call them by name. But I didn't want to be swallowed by the past either. I had spent my whole life trying to make them happy. Now, I wanted to live to figure out who I truly was. And I started with the smallest thing. Each morning, I took a walk in the park near my house, a place I'd passed hundreds of times but never truly paused in. I sat on a bench, listened to the wind, watched the kids play, and asked myself, if I wasn't someone's child, someone's sister, who would I be? Little by little, I felt myself changing. I stopped waiting for a response. I no longer mourned the family dinners I wasn't invited to. Instead, I began to build a small world of my own. A tidy little apartment, a few plants I was learning to care for, books I'd always wanted to read but never had the time for. I even found a small online community. People who had been cast out by their families for not meeting expectations, sharing their stories. And in hundreds of those stories, I saw myself. And I saw hope. I started writing. Not for publishing, not for anyone to read. Just to let out what I had been through. The times I was left out of family photos, the dreams cut short by a sentence like, "That's not really for you." And I realized I had lived too long in someone else's framework. Now, even if it hurts, even if it's lonely, this is the first time I'm living for myself. Not to prove anything, just to be me. I don't know where my relationship with my family will go from here. Maybe we'll always stay distant. Maybe one day, someone will look back and understand. But even if that day never comes, I'll have no regrets. Because I chose self-respect over false belonging. And sometimes, the first step to finding real love is to stop looking for it in the places that once broke you. I used to think that if I'd come this far, the old ties would slowly fade and eventually snap with time. But no, family is a strange thing. No matter how many times you've been hurt, no matter how often you've sworn you'd never look back, the moment you hear the words mom or dad or sibling, your heart still skips a beat. That afternoon, I was standing in a bookstore holding a novel by a female author I'd recently grown to love when my phone buzzed. Caller, Dad. I froze. It had been nearly 3 months since our last conversation. I hesitated for a few seconds, then picked up. "I've been hospitalized for high blood pressure," he said flatly. "Just thought you should know." No apology, no request. And yet, I found myself closing the book, walking out of the store, and heading to the hospital. When I walked into the room, the whole family was already there. Mom was peeling fruit. My brother was on his phone. My sister curled up in a corner chair. No one said anything when I entered. No one ran up to hug me. No, "It's been so long." But I saw the flicker of surprise in their eyes. Maybe because I showed up. even though they had once turned their backs on me. I sat down next to the bed. I didn't say much, just looked at my father. He gave me a small nod, maybe a hello, or maybe an unspoken admission. You're still my child, even if I never say it out loud. I didn't stay long. After about half an hour of stiff silence, I stood up and said quietly, I came to make sure you're okay. That's enough. And I left. No one stopped me. No one followed. But the strange thing was, I didn't feel hurt like I used to, because for the first time, I realized I didn't need them to feel like I mattered. That night, I sat by the window of my apartment, watching people pass by below. I didn't feel sad, just light. I thought about the money I had, the plans I hadn't finished. But most importantly, I thought about the life I was slowly building, not to prove anything to anyone, but to finally honor myself. I started making monthly contributions to a small scholarship fund for students who had once felt invisible in their own families. Like me. No one needed to know who the donor was. No thanks were necessary. I'm not seeking revenge on my family. I just chose to live differently. I still keep the winning lottery ticket in a small frame on my desk, not because of the money, but because that was the day I was born again. Not by luck, but by choosing to stand up for myself. Maybe they'll never understand me. Maybe they'll always call me ungrateful. But I don't need forgiveness. Because I was never wrong. I'm just a daughter who finally learned how to love herself. If you've ever felt like the outsider in the very house you grew up in, if you've ever been forgotten at family gatherings, left behind on trips, or talked over in conversations, I want to tell you just one thing. Your worth isn't defined by how others treat you. It's defined by how you choose to treat yourself. Don't wait for a door to open where it once slammed shut. Don't spend your life trying to please people who only love you when it benefits them. Build a new door, just for you. Walk through it and live a life that doesn't need anyone's permission. You are not selfish for loving yourself. You are not ungrateful for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for saying no to unfair expectations. You're simply doing what others should have done for you long ago, protecting you, seeing you, respecting you. And if today you're standing on the edge between family loyalty and self-respect, I hope you're strong enough to choose the latter. Because real love, true family, will never ask you to lose yourself just to be accepted. That's the end of the story. If you found it meaningful, please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe to support us. Thank you for listening. Take care and see you in the next video.